I can do that.
Excellent, thank you.
So, can you see it on the screen?
Yep, can.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, I am kind of following up behind Aaron in terms of discussing the lead halide perovskite materials, but moving a little bit away from charge transfer between a type of charge carrier transport layer. A single lead vacancy can have so just, a really brief outline, and I might cut this out for the talk, but just a little short introduction and then go over methodology, and then look at what role the lead vacancy plays in the electronic structure, and then what role it has in terms of directing dynamics and also for both molecular and electron dynamics. So, just as the brief introduction, lead halide perovskites have become very popular with their low-cost, easy synthesis, and high efficiency in terms of photovoltaics. And so something of interest are the actual photophysics and how they relate to specific molecular motions within the material. Now, the synthesis of the material isn't perfected, so during production, it's easy to create defects within the material of different kinds, but also once the material is put into a device or out into the field, there can be some typical sort of type of breakdown that can also cause these types of deficiencies. And so we're interested in what role a single lead vacancy can have within a bulk material. And something also we're going to highlight a little bit is there a role of an IV molecule formation dependent on this lead vacancy, and how can that direct any of the dynamic processes? So Aaron covered most of the methodology in his talk, and so I don't know if I'll spend as much time because I do want to have a little bit of discussion once we get towards the results. And I'm guessing you probably have a slightly different version of the talk in front of you versus what I'll be presenting. But just kind of a brief outline of what we'll look at with the methodology is we'll start with looking at the ground state electronic structure. So taking these types of this cubic bulk system of this lead halide perovskite, looking at the electronics with and without a lead vacancy introduced into the material, but then also what happens when we start adding multiple charges into the system to have a charge defect system. And so through that, we'll be interested in the molecular dynamics, and so we'll run heating and molecular dynamic simulations, but then also using non-back couplings and a reduced matrix formalism within Redfield for types of electron phonon interactions and looking at dissipated energies for explosive transitions. And so these are two equations that you saw earlier in terms of scaling the temperature and accruing the velocities to get to an ambient temperature which we want to study, and implementing those as input for the dynamics. And then going through the dynamics, being able to look at the electronic structure as a function of the atomic positions and how it changes from time step to time step to try and account for the atomic motion, what role it plays in migrating photoexcited charges within the material. And so once we have these types of back couplings determined between the time steps, we put them into a Redfield tensor which provides the transition probabilities between individual states, which is one portion of the overall equation for motion electronic degrees of freedom. And so the Redfield portion coupled with the Liouville can allow us to study this type of time-independent density matrix. And so starting from some initial excitation which we generally take from strongest oscillator strengths within the ground state. We move an electronic charge from one state to another, and then follow the energies expectation value as a function of time, and fitting this energy with a single exponential to determine a rate of non-radiative relaxation for that event. So going from there, we'll move into some of the results based on these types of methods. And so the ground state density of states is a good place to begin. So for this type of system, once we create a lead vacancy and introduce an additional charge, it's going to create an open shell type spin system. And so it's easier to well, it necessitates spin polarized calculations. In order to be congruent throughout all of them, we need to do spin polarized calculations for all of the systems that we're interested in. And so there's three images here. One is the perfect no defect system on the left. And you can see that there is a red on top and blue on the bottom, separating spin up and spin down components to the density of states. The filled is the occupied, the unfilled is the unoccupied. And so with the left and middle portions, you can see that they're symmetrical on top and bottom, meaning that, well, and they should be because they were, well, there should be no mismatch of spin up and down electrons in the system because there's an easy number. Now, the main difference between the middle and left is the creation of this lead vacancy within the bulk material. And so what I want to highlight here is
John?
In between, yes.
Which slide are you at?
Slide 9. Oh. Sorry. I was clicking on my PowerPoint on my screen and not the arrows on the presentation. Sorry. All right. Are we up to density of states?
Yeah, well, I think we were following, right? We were watching on our slides.
Oh, I'm there. Okay. Sorry. Yep, I gotta remember to click
it
that.
started diverging too far.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I completely forgotten that I needed to click that instead of my PowerPoint. Okay, so the main difference between the middle density of states plot and the left one is the creation of this lead vacancy. And so what I wanted to say was I wanted to highlight this small unoccupied state that resides within the initial band gap of the perfect system. And there's also a tailing off at the valence band edge that you can see for this lead vacancy state. Now, the other important thing or system that we were looking at here is once we created this lead vacancy, we're adding an additional electron to the system, creating an open shell spin state. And so now we can see that the spin up and spin down components in the right density of states figure are no longer symmetrical. What you can see is for the beta or spin down in blue is there's a small unoccupied state created just above the valence band for the system. And so now we have uneven types of states, which can result in different relaxation pathways and maybe produce some different type of mechanism for facilitating any type of relaxation process, whether it be non-radiative or radiative or any combination of, or any type of recombination possible. And so going forward from this, outside of the density of states, we're also interested in the optics of the material itself. And so what's plotted here are, again, the density of states on the left, just more in line form. And for the top, it's the lead vacancy neutral state. And on the bottom, it is the lead vacancy with the additional charge. And so what you can see is that the absorption, which is the top right plot, you can see that there's this creation of an absorption band somewhere around 600, a little over 600. And so that's due to this new additional state within the original band gap. Now, for the spin polarized system on the bottom, you can see that there's a additional state more or less produced by the spin down component at about 1100 nanometers, and so that's the very shallow state produced by this extra electron being injected into the system. And so there's both a combination of the up and down for a total absorption spectrum, but also how it breaks down into the two constituent components. It's important to note that we're taking them individually and for right now, there's no type of cross-coupling between the two spins within the system. Now, what's shown on the right are partial charge densities for the HOMO and LUMO. I don't know, you probably can't see my mouse pointer, but for these bulk systems, if you imagine in the middle of this material piece that I'm showing, and then just up and to the right a little bit is where the lead is taken out of the middle of the material. And so you can see that a lot of the charge density for the systems is localized near this type of lead vacancy in the material. So going from the ground state to the heating molecular dynamics, trying to provide updated coordinates in some type of ambient room temperature condition that would resemble experiment, what we're able to do is look at how the electronic energies of each Kohn-Sham orbital are changed as the atomic positions are updated according to this dynamic trajectory. So what's shown on the screen here are 4 different trajectories. On the very left, there is the energy fluctuations for the lead vacancy with no charge. And then secondly, there are the spin up and spin down fluctuations for the lead vacancy with 1 charge.
John?
And then, yes.
For the very first image, can you indicate later in this panel where is HOMO and LUMO?
Yeah. So
tell it right now by words.
Yeah, I was going to verbally go over that. Okay. So we'll just focus on the very first image here, and then the rest of it will follow. So one of the interesting things that we're trying to figure out with the system is when I showed you the density of states for this lead vacancy system, so it'd be the middle density of states, there was this generation of an additional state within the band gap material. Okay. And after the heating simulation, and then at the beginning of this molecular dynamic simulation, so you'll see where the states start below -6 eV. So the HOMO and LUMO are actually both located at like -6.1, very close to that. And so band gap itself has more or less closed, but there's still this extra state localized, negative about 4.7. And so there's a restructuring going on even during the heating simulation away from what this ground state electronic structure looks like. And so then propagating along this molecular dynamic trajectory, you can see that this state that's more or less inside the subgap goes way up top and more or less forms up into that upper band. Yes?
Is it right that LUMO near valence band can be interpreted as p-doped semiconductor? Okay, good.
Yes. And so a lot of, a number of the literature results also go forward in discussing this creation of kind of like a p-doped unoccupied state that's just above the valence band itself. And so in this term, where we're slightly interested in what's causing these huge fluctuations in these quantum orbital energies in terms of molecular motion. So I'll get to that a little bit later. But the other important thing to note in that first left-hand plot is once you get to about 400, you can see that the top of this valence band, which would be the LUMO, this blue line, jumps up quite a bit in energy, almost to about -5 EV. And so I'm still trying to decipher where that's coming from, but we think it may or may not be related to the formation of some type of I2 molecule itself. So then the charged system, which would be the second column for alpha and beta, the alpha looks fairly benign. There's no real huge subgap or anything. With the beta, you see that at the more or less towards the top of the valence band, there is one state a little bit higher than the others that comes back down. And that's more or less expected as the spin polarized system showed that there was an unoccupied state close to the edge of the valence band for the spin down system. Now, a second system, which is relatively new, is this 2- dianion system. And so with 2 additional electrons, there's 2 different configurations. One is a singlet where they both populate the same, and so spin polarized calculations are needed, but then also a triplet state where they both populate 2 individual extra electronic states. And so with the singlet, you can see that again, there's this energy state that starts up in the more or less the subgap, but now with 2 additional electrons, it goes down instead of up. And so since the couplings are running through the systems, hopefully we'll find something out in the next few days or whenever they're ready about what might be driving that. And then with the triplet form, it more or less looks similar to that of the -1 lead vacancy system, where the beta does have a little bit higher energy, comes from orbital above the valence band that drops back down close to that. So there's definitely a distinct difference in how the different energy levels can be directed dependent on how many charges or what number of electronic states could be filled. So is there a commonality between just the lead vacancy neutral system and the dianion singlet that results in this energy state being pushed down versus it going up to the top of the subgap? All right. And so since the neutral system is one we have the data sets for, we're interested into why some of these fluctuations were so irregular compared to, more or less the standard smaller fluctuations but maintaining relatively the same energy. And so on this slide, I'm showing the HOMO and LUMO and then the LUMO +1. And so the LUMO +1 was a state that started more or less in this subgap and jumped way up. But there's also, just showing again that the density is also localized for the majority of, the HOMO and LUMO around this lead vacancy. But then also for the LUMO +1, it's more or less in line. So you think you go one back and we're not exactly localized right around the vacancy, it's more towards pushed just a little bit outside towards the adjacent lead type atoms. And so the table here is showing what the energy values were in the ground state, just representing the density of states, but also how much they change during the heating simulation, so from the ground state to the beginning of the dynamic simulation. So you have the HOMO and LUMO both going very close to this -6.07, -6.06, and then having this LUMO +1 drop to the middle of this subgap, almost replacing the initial LUMO level itself. And so one of the things that's happening in this dynamic trajectory that isn't seen in any of the others is the formation of this I2 molecule. And so This is a PDF. On the left, you'll see the whole structure. There's actually a video that goes with it, but that's not going to play for you. But then the other three figures are snapshots, and within the red oval on each of the systems is where this iodide formation is occurring. So at time of 292 femtoseconds, what begins is there's a full connection between a lead and iodine, second iodine, and the second lead. So it's more or less all interconnected. At 359 femtoseconds, one of the lead iodine bonds breaks, and then at 475 femtoseconds, the second lead iodine breaks, and so now you have a free-form I2 molecule within the system. And so the next slide is also a video. So you're going to see the initial radial distribution function for iodine itself. If I was to click play for you, what you would see is the main peak localized, just over 4, more or less kind of shift a little bit, become more asymmetric, and then you would see this small peak going down towards 2 come out, and so it oscillates back and forth somewhere between 2.4 and 2.8. And so the interatomic distance for an I2 molecule is about 2.65, give or take a little bit. And so it shows this peak forming and then oscillating up for the remainder of the system. And so I'm trying to identify a specific time period in which this I2 plays a major role in the dynamics themselves. Now, so that was just molecular dynamics based on classical calculations. And so the real interest lies in what role do these fluctuating energies of states have on the electron dynamics, so the photoexcited processes. So on here, what I'm showing are the Redfield tensors for the perfect system, the lead vacancy neutral system, and then the spin up and down for the charge system. And so this can give us a look at the transition probability between individual states, where the probability is higher for states closer in energy, which is why they're more or less located on the diagonals. But we can also try to look at relative intensities along the diagonal between the different systems and electronics configurations to see if there's anything that can try and help us moving forward. So between the perfect and the neutral, the creation of this lead vacancy, it almost looks like it increases the transition probability because the total scale of the intensity of these peaks doubles with the creation of this lead vacancy. But the second thing is also right in the middle of the plot is more or less the homo-to-homo or homo-to-homo and lumo-to-lumo transitions, which will be 0. And you can see that the relative intensity for the neutral within the conduction band has more or less a yellow and orange peak that are larger than the rest, whereas with the perfect system, it's more uniform. So there's a different coupling with the addition of these states close to the edges of the gap that are playing a strong role in that in the perfect system, which is what we would expect with new relaxation pathways being opened up with the creation of this state. For the spin up and down systems, you can see that for the spin down, the intensity of the transitions at the edge of the valence band, so in the green, are less than that of the spin up system. And there's also varying intensity within the conduction band of the red peaks, showing specific transitions for this could be a little bit more interesting. And with the spin down system, we're expecting this unoccupied state very close to the edge of the valence band taking a large part. And so to look at the time scales that can come from strong excitations in the system, I took the transition with the strongest oscillator strength for each of those systems as examples to provide and just look at some of the relative differences between them. So with the perfect system, we're looking at a HOMO minus 19 to a LUMO plus 10 transition. And so here, the electron relaxation is somewhat close to just under 4 picoseconds, whereas for the whole relaxation, it's just under 1 picosecond. So I would say they're relatively scalable to experimental results, but the charge carrier lifetime, the difference between the electron and hole lifetime isn't very big, which isn't necessarily what you might want for collection of the charges. Now, when moving to the neutral, with the addition of this lead vacancy, you can see that the hole lifetime is relatively similar to that of the perfect system, but the electron lifetime is extended out close to somewhere around 75 picoseconds. So you have a much longer lived charge carrier lifetime just with the creation of this lead vacancy. And then moving towards the spin up and spin down with the relative similarities between the charge up and perfect density of states, and also the charge down and neutral density of states, we would expect them to have similar rates and lifetimes of charge carriers, and indeed that is what we see, where the charge up has relatively small charge carrier lifetime, whereas for the charge down with this additional beta state, the lifetime is extended and there's a much more drastic change between the two charge carriers. And so with these types of results, with the extended lifetimes of these charge carriers, if it's connected to some type of electrode or transport material, having them separated for much longer allows for a higher collection efficiency, theoretically. But it can also enhance, if you can collect them before they drop down in energy, allow for a higher flow voltage or more energy to be extracted from this hot carrier before it cools or loses all its energy to thermal vibration. Now, the next slide is more or less just looking at the trending of the rates. So I listed here, a number of the highest oscillator strength transitions, but from the figure itself, it shows that there's a relative trend of the whole relaxations being much slower than that of the electrons, and also that there is some type of with a single exponential or needing some type of secondary look for multi-integral rate calculation, which is currently ongoing, and I know Aaron was looking at something about that as well. Now, that's all well and good for photovoltaics. In terms of optoelectronics, another useful portion is the photoluminescence, and so the ability to look at the relative rates of radiative and non-radiative portions in determining quantum yields within the systems can also provide a picture of how good these materials might be for other types of applications such as lasing. But we're also interested in what does this lead vacancy do to impact these types of quantum yields themselves. And so with the neutral and the spin down having similar density of states or electronic structures, we assume that the quantum yields might be similar, and indeed they're very low quantum yields, whereas the spin up doesn't have any additional defect state put into it, and the quantum yield is close to 45. And so the neutral, or the perfect system isn't on here, and I need to add that when we're done with this. So kind of in conclusion, we talked about the role of what a lead vacancy can do to the electronic structure of both methylammonium lead iodide system, and also how that can affect relative photoluminescence and non-radiative relaxation processes in the material. So with this additional state that can be created by lead vacancy, there's a chance for new relaxation processes and pathways available, while also reducing the quantum yield of the photoluminescence within the bulk material. And so one of the important things was being able to apply this spin polarized methodology to the system and account for both of the spins and what this might do, but also looking at how the charge of the system can direct a possible, molecular iodine formation, because it's only seen in a neutral system, whereas once you start adding charge, there's no longer the formation of this I2 molecule. And so with that, I think I will say thank you. And I have a couple other slides for discussion, but I will stop there.
Okay, well, thank you, John. Any observations, comments, questions?
Hey, John.
Yes.
I believe on slide 6 there is something that needs to be corrected.
Okay.
I apologize in advance if I'm incorrect.
No, that's fine. I got to remember to change it on the other screen. Yep.
So I believe on the pairs of black arrows on the right side, the Hij should be Vij.
Yeah, if to be congruent with the equations, yes, that would be correct.
I made the same mistake in my presentation.
Right. I mean, the image itself comes from their paper, and that's how they had it labeled.
Okay.
But, so yeah, so there's there's a difference between the picture and how I labeled it, but I'll make a comment with that it's the same.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, Elaine, you have a question? Oh, okay. Go ahead. Maybe you can come closer to the microphone.
I guess my question is about the quantum yield. So how did you calculate the quantum yield?
Right. So for the quantum yield itself, it's the ratio of the radiative versus the sum of the radiative and non-radiative portions. So the radiative rates are calculated through the Einstein coefficient using the oscillator strengths of the ground state structure, and then the non-radiative rates come from our dynamics calculations. And so that's where the rates come from, and that's what I'm using for the quantum yield.
Okay.
I think one of the very last slides I have. So here's where the radiative lifetimes come from. So that's just the A2 one is the Einstein coefficient, and then flipping it to the lifetime, but getting the rate out using the oscillator strength, and then using those two rates.
Okay.
You have questions here?
Yeah, I got a question for you, John. So if you go to slide 16, yep, that one. What one? 16, sorry, that's 17.
Is
with the electron dynamics?
Is it not showing?
It's there now.
Okay.
So your x-axis labels, or you have two different labels for your x-axis, and both of them differ from the ones that Aaron had. I was thinking maybe you guys could discuss why. Or...
Yeah, no, it's so I think so the one generally the way I do it is the figures on the left is generally how I show them, but I could easily switch them. So they should be congruent. I would agree that I need to change to them to be congruent, but also the way Aaron had it is probably more correct than what I show. So I should add that in.
Okay.
More questions or comments? I guess I have a question. Yep, please. So, did you use 1,000 couplings, or for like for your energy fluctuations? It shows 1,000 time steps.
Yep. So yes, I did, and this is I have a couple questions, because you did some of this where you did multiple integrals for getting rates. Is that correct?
Oh,
We
for the,
looked at couplings for different systems, and
I guess, honestly, I kind of ballparked it. I didn't explicitly change the code. So I just kind of lined it up with the logs because it works out nicely because if it's 0, it's going to be 1 or pretty close to 1. So I guess I didn't change it explicitly. I just kind of backhanded. But I guess my comment
so
was,
yeah. Go ahead.
right, I was just going to ask because since like, well, it's like the rates that you got there around picoseconds. So I was just concerned that usually, like, if you didn't have enough couplings, if you tried to project that through further times, whether your results would be reliable. But since you got your rates up to about picoseconds, I guess it works out.
Yeah, I mean, it's, so one of the things we've discussed is, so like if I go back to these plots of the fluctuations, right? I mean, so there's 3 very distinct regions in which the couplings could vary quite a bit, where if you look at, say, 0 to 300, where that, that 1 Concha mobile goes way back up to the conduction band. And then when you look at, say, 700 to 1,000, you have this divergence of the top peak and the valence band that goes up. I mean, you're going to get, drastically different coupling regions between each of those states. And so one of the things that I've done is I've recalculated like the Renfield tensor, looking at specific sections of that. And one of the things that I did was once the iodine, the I2 molecule formed, looking at the coupling once it was formed versus, before it was formed. And so this slide is for the strongest, well, so I took the energy pop file from that specific time step where I started and at the end, and then the oscillating strength file for that time step. So this was the strongest transition. But even here, I mean, the whole relaxation is a little bit longer than the first iteration, but only because now the holes become more separated in the second half of the trajectory, rather than the first half. All those states are relatively packed together. And so I got to figure out a way to find a good balance between capturing what's actually going on with those segments of where the spacing is changing for the energy levels. So yeah, that's something I got to work out a little bit though.
I think it'd be helpful just to look at maybe one system specifically, because I mean, it's good work doing all 4, but it's kind of hard to keep track between all of them when you're using them at one time.
Yeah, well, and that's why I think with the neutral system with this iodine is getting formed. I mean, that's definitely more interesting than some of the others where there's nothing else really happening in the dynamics. And so, but it could change once we get the couplings done for the doubly excited, the 2 anion state or trajectory. So, yeah, I'll try to keep that in perspective and focus on the one, and then maybe look at trending at the others as kind of a secondary thing.
So. 10 minutes over the time for the presentation. So you need to design how to squeeze and explain it comprehensively. So please scan and send comments to John. And let's thank him once again. Yulun and Adam, maybe Yulun will go first because it will be quicker, and then the whole time after will be dedicated to Adam's thesis.
Okay. We will attempt to share screens.
Please.
Oh, that's not going to work. Okay. Can you guys see it?
We can hear, but we do not see your slides.
Now?
Not yet. Not yet. There should be share the content. John, can you
Hold on, I got
explain if?
just a sec. I'm installing an extension.